Hi, and welcome to another segment of Economic Strategies for Trinidad and Tobago in the 21st century. Today, we are going to look at the current economic environment in Trinidad and Tobago based on the policies implemented by the previous government and continued by the current government, how it affects us and where it will take us. Our economic environment is characterized by liberalization, privatization, non-productive loans, taxes, downsizing, devaluation, and foreign sales of our national assets. All of this activity is based on a recycled theory of free trade. Let us examine why this theory has been recycled and why it is unrealistic for our economy. Contrary to current free trade propaganda, the statistics show that the age of greatest growth in the world economy was the post-World War II era. This period was characterized by high tariffs and regulatory barriers that sheltered national economies and markets. Japan and Korea, the most highly protected markets, were also the leaders in growth during that period. Now let us look at the recent euphoria in Trinidad and Tobago and the Third World over free trade. To put this euphoria in perspective, I want to read from the Dictionary of Economics produced by Penguin Books. Classical economists' support of free trade policy was not so much based on specific economic analyses of international trade, as simply part of their general belief in what Adam Smith, the economist, called the hidden hand. This is the belief that the greatest benefit would be achieved if individuals were left to seek their own profit. Now, friends, what this means is that this is not based in economic reality, but that a few economists think that this is what will happen if everyone is left to feather his own nest at the expense of the rest of society. What has caused more destruction in the world today than the belief that individuals seeking their own profits will somehow make sure that there is an automatic trickle-down to those most in need? Unmitigated greed has never been translated into Adam Smith's hidden hand theory. Let us continue in the dictionary. Most economists would agree that under present conditions, complete freedom of trade would not be desirable. In any case, it is clear that individual countries could gain from protectionism. Indeed, there will be no survival without protection. Why? Because in small economies such as ours, free trade will destroy our infant industries and even the mature ones. In fact, we are actually going against the opinion of most economists in the world. Are our officials that smart so as to ignore the professional opinions of the majority of economists? On what do they base their actions, their feelings, imaginings, their dreams? What scholarly basis do they use to embrace the application of the theory of free trade to Trinidad and Tobago? I want you to read on with me so that you understand the deception that is crafted as economic truism. Carefully note the next section. The free trade era lasted in England for almost a century. After World War I, economic nationalism reached its peak, and free trade was abandoned for protectionism. In other words, this is not a new idea. It is a recycled idea. It has been around before, but it has been recycled because it is believed that the same conditions exist today as existed pre-World War I. The only difference is that the player calling the shots is the United States, not England. However, remember that Japan, Germany, the European Economic Community, and the Asian tigers are not following this free trade economics. Only poor Latin American, Caribbean, and other third world countries are following the lead dog. And remember, the scenery for the follow dogs never changes. Let us revisit the economic environment of pre-World War I. In this environment, the sun never set on the British Empire. Fellow citizens, if we owned the British Empire and the sun never set on your empire, free trade would be in your best interest. Britain had colonies to supply her with raw materials, and she in turn supplied them with finished goods. A simple trade arrangement that did not need any regulations or barriers. This arrangement extracted wealth from the colonies and transferred it to Britain. Today, the only difference in that equation is that the key player is the United States, where the sun never sets on its sphere of influence. This period is not characterized by formal colonies, but by military might and the fact that the world's economic system is tied to United States stability. The United States pushes free trade because it can produce all of the goods and services to satisfy all of our needs. It knows that underdeveloped nations cannot compete, and since it cannot force Japan, Germany, China, and most members of the EEC to blindly accept free trade, it needs our markets. Americans need our markets because they are finding it very difficult to maintain their standard of living with the head-to-head competition posed by Japan and Germany. Wealth to maintain the standard of living must come from somewhere, from underdeveloped third world nations. If this situation persists, we will never be able to develop our economy. And since we have sold off our productive assets to foreign interests, the only place left to generate new revenues for national services will be in taxes. Fellow citizens, wake up. Free trade is not a new economic theory. It is a recycled theory that operated over 100 years ago when we were a colony. It has been recycled to return us to colonialism, poverty, and underdevelopment. Dr. Williams, with the cooperation from Dr. Capildeo, struggled to take this nation to independence. In a few short years, the people who worked under him have taken us back to a new form of colonialism. A colonialism that leaves our new colonial masters fully in charge of our economics, but without the responsibility to develop the country's infrastructure or our people. The only responsibility they have is to make a profit and to take it out of the country. Dr. Williams and Dr. Capildeo must be turning in their graves. In the 70s, a large movement of interest-sensitive funds from the US to Europe pushed European currencies against dollar ceilings, causing capital flight from the dollar. President Nixon suspended the gold convertibility of the dollar and imposed surcharges on dutiable imports into the United States. This action transformed the international monetary system from a gold standard. When the gold standard did not satisfy the needs of the United States, she abandoned it. Today, protectionist trade does not serve her interests, so she has abandoned it. And when free trade no longer serves her purpose, she will abandon it. And what will be the result for Trinidad and Tobago when that happens? We will not have grown. We will not have penetrated the United States markets, and we will be poorer. And like Canada and Mexico, our currency will be further devalued. In short, we will be worse off than before and will very likely be living at the standard of livings of the 1950s. So if you want to revert to the 50s, continue down the path of free trade. If we do not intend to return to the living of the standards of the 1950s, then we must recognize that we will never be a significant world economic player. But we have an obligation to our citizens to improve their standard of living and to create an environment where all of our citizens can achieve their potential. It's like the game of cricket or soccer. We must play, regardless of the size of the nation represented. And we must play to win for our nation. We must seek our own self-interest while participating in the global economic game. That is our right and our obligation to our nation. And if the rules of the game predetermine that we will be losers, we need to modify the rules so as to gain the winning edge. Only fools participate in games that they are sure to lose. Remember when the United States decided to modify the rules of the Olympics? She entered the dream team, the best she had. Winning was the only thing. Let us play to win for our people. Now let us look at privatization. Nothing is wrong with the concept of privatization. What is wrong with our privatization is that we are selling off the strategic assets and resources to foreign firms. And foreign companies repatriate profits, and profits are needed for reinvestment in our economy. In effect, we have sold the engine of our economy, Fortran, Utria, Textile, etc., and kept the frame. You must also understand that these firms are really not investing when they purchase our assets and resources cheaply. How is it investing? All that has occurred is a transfer of wealth from one entity to another and profit taken. Top management jobs are back in the owner's country. The high-wage jobs are kept for their people, and the best technology is not deployed here. In reality, what is investing in our country? When firms invest in our economy, they bring in new productive capacity, new jobs, new technology, new processes, and new money. That is investing in our economy. Do not be fooled by their economic jargon. Now, this is going to make you uncomfortable when you hear about what has been happening with our money. The Inter-American Development Bank lent us $10.5 million, called a pre-investment loan. The loan was used to perform a study on how to strengthen the Central Tenders Board and pre-investment studies. In other words, they are lending you money to study how to sell your assets. Another loan was for $31.5 million. Another set of studies were accomplished. How to reduce transportation costs in the farm areas, and safety administrative system for road maintenance. Nothing was ever done or accomplished, just studies. Another $80 million investment sector reform loan, studies were performed to do the following. Divestment program for state enterprises. Again, a study to sell your assets. Establishment of an independent oversight security agencies. Well, after you have sold all of your assets, what is the need for this agency? Restructuring of the agricultural bank. Liberalization has destroyed our farmers. Legal and regulatory reforms to provide a framework for privatization. Again, how to sell your assets. Phase 1, price liberalization. In other words, how to destroy agriculture and small manufacturers. And the final one, social services to impoverished groups. Now this last study, social services to impoverished groups, is very, very interesting because they know that the result of their policy will impoverish many groups, including most of the middle class. If you do not believe me, check out Mexico and Canada. What is most interesting is that foreign consultants perform most of these studies. To summarize, we have borrowed 122.5 million US dollars, or 696 million TT dollars, at a variable interest rate of 7.5%, or 3% over the then prime rate, over a 20-year period. This means that as the prime rate of interest increases in the United States, and friends, the prime rate is now about 9%. Therefore, our interest rate is probably about 12%. At 7.5%, this means that we will pay back 255 million US dollars. If the rate of interest goes to 9.5%, then we will pay back 272.9 million US dollars. That is assuming we pay back principal and interest. We owe 1.5 billion Trinidadian dollars, all for studies that were performed by foreign firms. In other words, my friends, all we have to show for the loans that our children would have to pay back are studies. $1 billion worth of paper and more paper, with little or no action taken on them. We have paid to keep foreign consultants employed. Add this new debt to about $2 billion US dollar debt from 1989, and we now owe 13.5 billion TT dollars, all to keep foreign consultants employed. We did not even produce the pens, paper, computers, or anything dealing with these studies. My friends, nothing is wrong with borrowing money, but it must be put to productive uses. If we had borrowed this money to purchase capital goods and expertise to produce goods for export, this would be good, solid, progressive economics. Instead, we have borrowed 122 million US dollars to provide jobs for foreign consultants. And based on the interest rate, we will have increased our national debt by $1.5 billion. If we only pay the interest, we will pay approximately 1.34 billion TT dollars. And after 20 years of paying, we will still owe the principal sum of 701 million TT dollars. If you can swallow this and still feel comfortable with your leaders, then we deserve what we get. You know, in the huge meat slaughterhouses in the United States, the easiest way to get cows moving forward to the slaughterhouse is to put a cowbell around the neck of one of the cows and lead her in the direction they want her to go. The bell cow does not know what she is doing or where she is going, and neither do the cows following. But they like that tinkling noise, and they will follow it to their destruction. And my friends, we have a lot of bell cows making pretty noises and leading you or leading us to our ultimate death as well. Let us take a look at some of the tax areas, in particular the 15% value-added tax. This is the most regressive tax one can impose on a population. It will eliminate the middle class and create a society of rich and poor, conditions that resemble India, Mexico, Africa, and South America, where only immense wealth and utter poverty exists. This will only heighten tensions between the rich and poor and create a class crisis. Now let us take a look at downsizing and its effect on the nation. The downsizing of government has reduced the tax base and created a loss of institutional knowledge, experience, and expertise. The foreign companies who purchase our assets are also downsizing with the same effect on the national economy. In addition, we lose our self-esteem when we replace our managers with foreign managers. When we lose our self-esteem, we lose our motivation and ultimately our productivity. When we do not produce, the only thing that we, the citizens, can look forward to is more taxes and higher costs for services and products. Let us look at the new monetary regime, devaluation, and its impact on the national economy. Devaluation can be used as a tool in promoting trade competitiveness. That is, if you have products for sale. We do not have many products for trade, and we import about 80% of our goods and services. Therefore, devaluation cannot help us. We do not have a lot of manufactured products for sale, and our economy is primarily a buy and sell economy. Devaluation causes the cost of imports to rise, reduces our ability to purchase capital goods and technology. These goods are critical for our economic development, but we cannot get them because we cannot afford to buy them. Devaluation also reduces the value of our assets, making it cheaper for foreigners to purchase them, and they have done just that. Devaluation also causes our revenue from exports to decrease, since we have to sell more products in order to achieve the same old revenues. At the same time, it depletes and wastes our natural resources. This destroys our ability to make a reasonable profit and therefore destroys our businesses and other industries. Example, if we previously sold 20 bottles of pepper sauce for $20, we now have to sell 40 bottles to receive the same $20. Devaluation also increases the cost of education, making fewer people able to afford an education. The result is an erosion of our knowledge base, because people with knowledge leave the country because the value of their labor has been destroyed. A clerk in the United States earning a $12,000 annual salary will have as much purchasing power as one of our university-educated professionals earning $72,000 a year. And the persons with money move their money offshore so as to protect their value. All of these factors negatively impact on our ability to create wealth and our ability to complete. Devaluation also increases our debt. For example, we owed $2 billion US or $4.8 billion TT in 1989 when our exchange rate was $2.40. Today, if we did not borrow another penny, we would now owe $10.75 billion TT dollars, all because of the devaluation of our currency. Fellow citizens, what I have described is known in economics as the poverty cycle. People do not see any value in their work, and therefore they do not work. As a result, productivity is low. The result is low income. Because income is low, people cannot save. Since there are no savings, there are no investments. And if there's no money for investments, you cannot buy capital goods and technology that would enable you to produce products for export. The result is a cycle of perpetual poverty. Perpetual poverty. Perpetual poverty is where the current policy of foreign privatization, liberalization, devaluation, and excessive taxation will take us. We need to stop the policy of economic destruction now. If we had the technical, financial, managerial, entrepreneurial, and productive capacity of America, Japan, or Germany, this would be a fair policy. But we do not have a similar economy. And the recent crisis in Mexico should be a warning to us. A quote from Senator Tom Hawkins of Iowa is appropriate here. Over time, as ownership of our assets is transferred overseas, so is our ability to make important decisions that will affect our national interest. In fact, one only has to look at the recent huge devaluation of the Mexican peso to recognize that the free trade policy is not going to work for weak economies. In closing, let me leave you with this question from the January 16, 1995 Business Week. The cover story title sums up the reality with this question. Mexico, can it cope? The inside story is one you all should read. For a free copy, call Citizens Organization for Rebuilding the Nation at 671-7749. Thanks for viewing our program. Our next segment will discuss the programs that will take us out of the poverty cycle we have entered. Have a creative and successful day.